Willie B wins, but track limits and Kyle Busch versus Christopher Bell were the story of the weekend, so let's get into it. Coming up next. Oh, and we won at South Boston, by the way, just in case you didn't know. What's going on, everybody? Hope you're doing good today. All right, that footage right there at the very beginning, that was Craig Moore winning at South Boston for us. Feels good to be back in victory lane, but enough about us and our team. William Byron wins the race at COTA, and he did it by not putting a wrong foot forward at all during the entirety of the race. He basically had a perfect race. It's kind of like a pitcher throwing a perfect game in baseball. Not exactly the most exciting thing for people to watch if they're not appreciating the performance they're watching. For him to have that good of a car and not make a single mistake, that is something that is very rare, because a lot of times people with the best car, even if they win the race, they make a mistake. But William Byron had the perfect race. His pit crew had the perfect pit stops. So congratulations to William Byron. Let's look at the rest of the top 10 and then jump into the other stories. William Byron, of course, takes the win. Christopher Bell coming in second, had the fresher tires at the end and was walking them down. Ty Gibbs finishes third. Alex Bowman is fourth. Another good finish for Alex Bowman. Tyler Reddick ends up in fifth. And A.J. Allmendinger there in sixth, Ross Chastain in seventh, Chris Buescher in eighth. Kyle Busch rallies from a spin to get ninth, and Martin Truex Jr. does the same thing, rallies to get a 10th place after a spin. So once again, another good weekend for Chevrolet. Also another good weekend for Toyota. They continue their early season dominance, and it's looking like it's shaping up to be a season where it's Hendrick versus Joe Gibbs. So that's kind of the way the season is shaping up. Ford fans, you've sort of got the raw speed, but once again, Ford doesn't get the finish. So I don't know. Ford's got to figure something out, because it looks like Toyota is way ahead of them as far as the new car goes. And Chevrolet, they've still got the notes from last season. So those two have taken the early lead. So you got to say it was a bad race for Ford. Not only Ford, but also a bad race for SVG. He lost first gear, didn't get the finish that he wanted to get. And on the topic of Ford drivers, also Michael McDowell, he had some problems as well. Didn't get the finish that he wanted to get either, although he had a fast car. That was probably the biggest blow, one of the biggest blows to Ford. One of their faster drivers, and Michael McDowell, not being able to finish the race, because you had to think he was one of their key partners that they were hoping for to have a good race at this road course. You know who else had a bad race? Anybody named Kyle, especially if Christopher Bell was anywhere near him. Christopher Bell got into Kyle Larson, and he also got into Kyle Busch. Kyle Busch did not take kindly to the results. After the race, you can see him here walking up, and this footage from Toby Christie, I believe, walking up, and he was not happy with Christopher Bell. You can see here, he's telling him, it looks like he's saying, I don't know exactly what he's saying, but it looks like he's saying, that's the third time, you've wrecked me, and I haven't wrecked you any at all. That's what I took away from this conversation, even though you kind of had to lip read. And Christopher Bell didn't really have anything to say back, so Kyle Busch super fired up. As far as the move itself goes, Kyle Busch was racing somebody, and he went a little bit wide to because he was trying to make the pass or whatever. And then Christopher Bell came in there. He was running a normal line, but he really smoked it in there, being super aggressive. And because he smoked it in there, he didn't have any room. And when he ran out of room, he ran directly into Kyle Busch. So even though it was a normal line, you have to see what's going on in front of you, and you have to realize, hey, there's no chance that this pass is going to happen. Obviously, Christopher Bell thought the pass could happen, but he got it in there too deep, ran into Kyle Busch. So depending on what side of the fence you're on, I kind of agree with Kyle Busch. I think he sent it in there in a moment where he shouldn't have sent it in there. So I can 100% understand where Kyle Busch is coming from. But if you're a Christopher Bell fan, you can obviously just say, hey, he was running a normal line. Kyle Busch was out of the groove, and that's why the contact happened. But I tend to agree with Kyle Busch there on that one. I will also say that Christopher Bell seemed to have taken it well. Kyle Busch basically told him he's got one coming, and Christopher Bell said, I get it, I understand. And that's basically, when you're in the wrong, that's all you can do in that situation. So it seems like Christopher Bell thinks he was in the wrong as well, and he knows that Kyle Busch probably has one coming for him. And hey, we got Richmond and Martinsville coming up. It could happen sooner rather than later, so we'll have to see what happens with that particular deal. But once again, another race, and even though a lot of people said this race was boring to them or whatever, another race, another controversy. So this year has started off, the tempers have been just heightened more than I can ever really remember them at the beginning of the season. So many drivers having confrontations and conflicts pretty early on, really. The other big issue, of course, were track limits, and track limits were from the Truck Series all the way up to the Cup Series. Track limits were the biggest issue of the day. The two biggest ones that got probably the most attention were Shane Van Gisbergen at the end of the race in the Xfinity Series. They tacked on a 30-second penalty, taking away a really good points finish for him and putting him way further back in the pack, so that definitely hurt him. Chase Elliott in the Cup Series. Chase Elliott, with that particular penalty, got sent further back and didn't get the finish that probably his fans and Chase Elliott himself wanted. So track limits were definitely an issue, not so much in the Cup Series, but because it was Chase Elliott, it did get significant attention. But definitely, all throughout the Xfinity and throughout the trucks, all you heard about were people on Twitter complaining about the track limits. So let's take a look at why track limits all of a sudden became an issue in NASCAR. And I think you need to look no further than F1. F1 gained popularity with the Drive to Survive on Netflix. It sort of peaked in the United States, and I think it's actually, it hit critical mass, and now it's on a downward turn here in the States. But when F1 was at its peak, I think NASCAR looked at F1 and started to try to copy some of the things that F1 does, whether that be good or bad, which I'm going to get to in just a minute. But this definitely came from F1. F1 is all about track limits. That's how they, depending on which side of the fan base you look at, either that's how they refine the sport, and some fans think that that's how they pick the winners, or at least the finishing positions in the sport. Like, that's a whole debate I'm not getting into. But it definitely came from F1 because you never heard about track limits in NASCAR before the Drive to Survive catapulted in the United States F1 into the conversation. I also think that this is a bad look for NASCAR because NASCAR just needs to keep doing what it does. NASCAR is NASCAR, and it needs to keep that, essence of being NASCAR in the sport. They don't need to go look at other motorsports and copy what they're doing. NASCAR is its own thing, and they need to have the strength to stand on what they are and stop trying to be everything to everybody. Because when you start trying to be everything to everybody, you're nothing to nobody. So NASCAR just needs to do what it does. Like, some of the greatest moments in NASCAR, the pass in the grass with Dale Earnhardt Sr., and then not a lot of people even remember this one. There was a race at Riverside, I want to say, that Dale Earnhardt actually cut the course. Two drivers were racing, Jeff Bodine and I want to say maybe Ricky Rudd, and Earnhardt cut the course and actually ran through the grass and was able to get back onto the pavement and hold the car without it spinning out. So there was an actual pass in the grass at Riverside. So you take away some of those moments in NASCAR lore, which makes NASCAR NASCAR, right? Like, we are the organization that doesn't necessarily play by all of the automotive rules, right? So you sort of take some of that mystique and some of that, just the NASCAR-ness of NASCAR, if that's even a word, away from it when you're trying to be like other motorsports. And the other problem is, you're trying to be like F1, and F1 is, like I said, already hit critical mass, and their ratings and stuff are starting to decline in the United States. So you're trying to be like F1, and F1 is already losing favor in the United States. NASCAR just needs to stick to what it does and be itself. All right, that is all I got to say about that one, I guess. Here are the points after COTA. Martin Truex Jr. takes your lead over Ty Gibbs, Ryan Blaney, Denny Hamlin, Kyle Larson, William Byron there in 6th, Christopher Bell, Ross Chastain, Chase Elliott, Tyler Reddick, Alex Bowman, Chris Buescher, Kyle Busch, Daniel Suarez, John Hunter Nemechek, and Brad Keselowski are the 16 that would be in the playoffs right now if the season ended today. And then you got outside looking in, Chase Briscoe, Bubba Wallace, Austin Cindric, Michael McDowell, Eric Jones, and Joey Logano. So there you go, Joey Logano with that good finish, catapulting himself back up into the conversation where he can talk about getting in on points. I fully expected to win a race, though, so I'm not worried about it. Plus, it's an even year. But did want to mention the good finish for Joey Logano there. All right, that's all I got for you on this one. If you want to leave a comment down below, that would be much appreciated. First time to the channel, I would love to have your subscription. If not, I'll keep making these things. If you're already subscribed, I appreciate you guys as well. And if you want to help out the channel, there is a merch store. The link is down in the description where you can get hats like this. And other than that, thanks for your time. Peace.